Good afternoon, everyone. It's time for my next review on YouTube, and this is the 1989 underwater alien movie, The Abyss. Now, some background at first. Back when I was about fourth or fifth grade, I spent a couple weekends with my friend Robert at his lake house, and one of the things we did is we watched The Abyss. And I remember liking it then when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and thing is I hadn't seen it since then. So in the film podcast I'm on, Myopia Movies, was looking for movies to cover. I believe that was one I suggested, and that's something we eventually got around to doing. So here's my review. It's the near future year of 1994, because remember this movie was made in 1989, and the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine, the USS Montana, is wrecked in the Caribbean Sea near the Cayman Trench or something like that. And Soviet and Cuban naval vessels are gathering. The United States Navy hires a group of deep-sea oil drillers led by Virgil, also known as Bud Brigman, to use an underwater drilling platform to transport some Navy SEALs to the sunken submarine. And there's one little awkward complication. They also bring in the platform's designer, Dr. Lindsay Brigman, who is his estranged wife. And Bud is played by Ed Harris and Lindsay by Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. And so they're underwater in this deep-sea oil rig investigating a sunken submarine loaded with nuclear weapons and the mysterious forces of the deep that caused the submarine to wreck are still there and still interested. Dun 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 dun. So let's start with the good. I really like the acting in this movie. In particular, I liked Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio as Dr. Brigman. She does well as an engineer who's better with machines than with people, and she can sell grief and panic in a much more subtle way than Ed Harris. More on him later. Michael Biehn does a good job as Lieutenant Hiram Coffey. He's a leader of the Navy SEALs, and he starts to go a little crazy. I'm getting some serious Kane mutiny vibes off him, especially later in the film. And Todd Graff plays this guy named Hippie, who's a conspiracy theorist who's very attached to his pet rat. I liked all of them. I also thought the script is very well done. So the climactic events of the film are well foreshadowed. So in writing, there's something called the Chekhov's gun, where if a gun is to be fired in the third act, you better have it on the mantle in the first. And so when I was live tweeting this movie for the Myopia podcast, I kept noting Chekhov's this and Chekhov's that. So I would not go so far as to say there are no surprises in the film, but there are no ass pulls. Everything is well foreshadowed and makes sense, and nothing comes out of nowhere. Also, although they kind of have a little bit of the cliche, the aggressive military man, the more peacenik scientist, that stereotype is kind of subverted. Coffee's going crazy, and the people who are spouting the most cliches, this idea that soldiers are unthinking, order-following robots, or they can only see enemies, these are coming from rather flawed characters, like Hippie, who's just kind of a conspiracy theorist weirdo, and Dr. Brigman, who's just kind of abrasive and obnoxious. So they're not being treated as truth by the filmmakers. Also, even the movie is made in 1989, the special effects hold up really well. The underwater aliens, let's be honest, at this point we already know what they are very well done, as is the famous water tentacle that comes into the oil rig and explores it. It's only at the very end of the special effects falter a little bit. They kind of cause a bit like Tron, but even then it's not so bad. And even though I'd seen the movie at least twice before, and I spent a lot of the movie live tweeting it, there are sequences of legitimate suspense. So if you have not seen this movie before, or if you'd seen the movie before it was a long time ago and you're more focused on it, this would be very suspenseful. It's just very well done. And with the exception of some of the nuclear stuff in the submarine, the science works. According to Wikipedia, James Cameron got the idea for the movie when he was in high school after seeing a presentation on liquid breathing, which is a real thing. You fill up someone's lungs with a kind of fluid that mimics the fluid in the womb, and you can breathe even though your lungs are full of liquid. That's a real thing. And I think they actually quote unquote drowned the rats in this liquid breathing fluid and they were able to survive. And there's other major plot point involving something called deep hypothermic circulatory arrest, where the idea is you stop blood flow by lowering the body temperature to kind of put someone in suspended animation. That's also real. So this movie has got some really cool and real science in it, and I like that. And they got the scuba diving stuff done well too. So I am a PADI licensed scuba diver, and a lot of the underwater stuff rings true to my training. So there's something called overhead situations, like if you're in a wreck or a cave, there's something blocking you going to the surface. That's really dangerous. You need to have special certification for that. Or diving really deep, so you need special mixes of oxygen and helium or nitrogen rather than just using compressed air. Or panicking underwater, or decompression sickness. Those are all portrayed as very tricky and dangerous because they are. Like, I think everybody in the film had to become a certified scuba diver for this, and it shows. Okay. And once Coffee goes totally insane, there are some good underwater action sequences, including what's basically submarine demolition derby. That was really well done. And now that I've spent the last 6 minutes gushing about how great this movie is, time for some bad parts. So Ed Harris, when he's supposed to should be showing deep emotion, like worry or grief, he kind of overacts. I mean, given the circumstances, I'm not going to say what they are for spoilers. He'd obviously be upset. He kind of overdoes it. And a lot of lesser characters aren't given much to do or much development. And several of them die early on when part of the underwater rig is flooded. If they had been better developed, their deaths would have hurt more. So I would have probably had a smaller cast. Also, there's 2 different versions of this movie, and both of them are long. There's a theatrical release, which is one I saw years ago and then now. And then there's the director's cut. The theatrical release is about 2.25 hours long. The director's cut is close to 3 hours. That's definitely a time investment. The theatrical cut does drag a bit, and I've heard the director's cut has some improvements, like they elaborate why the Brigmans are heading for divorce and how the wreck of the submarine is becoming an international crisis. But a 3-hour movie, that's kind of intimidating, especially one that's not really action-y, like, say, Lord of the Rings. But overall, I would give this movie a 9 out of 10. It is definitely worth seeing again. I ended up ordering the special edition DVD that has the theatrical release and the director's cut off eBay, since in order to stream it, I'd have to get full-on Amazon Prime subscription. Luckily for the Myopia podcast review, I was able to rent the DVD from Videodrome right here in Atlanta. So when you scroll down, I'll have the links for the podcast, the Amazon, and Videodrome. Because, I mean, this movie is just good, and I really think you should see it. So, see y'all later.